All right, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 1985 Toyota MR-2. Behind me is a 1.6 liter inline 4 and down below is a 5-speed manual transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this here MR-2 for two reasons. First of all, I've driven the second and third generation MR-2, but never the first generation. And so this finally completes the trifecta of MR2 generations. However, I have not reviewed a supercharged first gen, a turbocharged second gen, or a sequential third gen. So if you have any of those three, please let me know. But the second reason I'm super excited to be driving this here MR2 is because back in the late 80s, my dad had a 1980 Mazda RX-7. I've talked about that a ton on my channel. But at the same time, my uncle, my dad's brother, had an MR2. And so I've driven tons of RX-7s before. I've owned 3 of them. I know what they're like. But it's time to see who had the better car of the household back in the late 80s. So let's get back to that 1.6 liter inline 4. It's the 4A GE engine from Toyota. It's a 16 valve dual overhead cam engine, and it is famed for being in the Toyota AE86. It revs out to about 7,400 RPM, and it's an absolute blast. This is a very stout motor and a very popular one at that. In terms of horsepower, it was around 112 horsepower here in the US, while overseas, the UK actually got 128 horsepower out of theirs, but it's a fun, buzzy motor. The 4A GE is thing of legend these days, mainly because of the Corolla. Is the MR2 fast? No, this is not a fast car. However, it's so fun to drive. It's so incredibly fun. It's fun to rev out. It's fun to row it through the gears. And no, you're not gonna set any land speed records, but that's not really the point behind the MR2. Yeah, like I said, not fast, but it's just so fun. It's just so fun. Like I said, paired to a 5-speed manual transmission, even though this car is from the 80s, has well over 160,000 miles on it, the transmission feels great, it shifts great, it's so much fun to shift. The clutch is nice and light, the gate is really easy to get it into gear, there's no guesswork, and it's just, I feel at one with this transmission. I really do. I haven't been driving this car for too long, and yet I feel like I've been driving it since I got my license. Another interesting base model fact about the AW11 MR2s is the fact that they had 4-wheel disc brakes on every trim level. You could not get an MR2 with drum brakes, which is great for the 1980s. Last but not least, of course, the MR2 is rear-wheel drive. So let's talk about the interior. We have some 80s goodness to go through in here. Well, in front of me, I have a bunch of different gauges. On the left is my battery voltage and fuel. Then I have my tachometer. I love the look of it. Super 80s. Then I have my speedometer on the right and my oil pressure and coolant temperature to the far right. I love this gauge setup. Super simple, super easy to read. It's not flashy. It's not interesting. I'm not going to doodle it in the next notebook that I write something in, but it's just so simple and it works. I love the tachometer. I love how it has the little yellow warning before it hits the red line. On the steering wheel, I don't get anything. It says Toyota, and the arms of the steering wheel are way down low, below the half mark of the car, which is very interesting, and you sort of associate with a cruiser type style. This definitely doesn't feel super sporty, but that can easily be changed. To the left of me, I have my headlight switches. Now up above that, you might see a switch. That's actually a dead switch because the headlight switches used to not work, but David has since fixed that. And so the headlight switches actually do work, which is phenomenal. I do have a little mirror adjustments down below the gauge cluster. To the right of the gauges, I do have my wiper controls, mist, things like that. And then down below, I get a dead switch. I'm sure this is a upper trim feature, but it just says Toyota, which I like. It's not a fully dead switch, at least you get a little logo. And on the door, I just have my crank for the windows and a little door latch and grab handle. Moving into the center, we really start to notice the angular 80s-ness of this car. Now, I don't normally talk about the glove boxes, but actually looking over at the glove box, it is very, very angular. Very angular. I get a digital clock up at the very top. Then I have just a single climate control vent, and then moving down, and then I have a little place to put change or whatever, and then I have my climate controls themselves. Something very interesting about the climate controls. This is 1985, and I not only have auto climate controls, but I also have economy, which are in these different plastics. Very, very interesting for an auto manufacturer to actually use different plastic for these buttons. You would think they would just use all the same plastic to save money, but for some reason they didn't here on the MR-2. So kind of advanced AC options for this car. And you have to remember also, this particular car is a base model and it came with AC. Pretty interesting. Then I have the factory cigarette lighter off to the right, which I'm sure is somewhat rare because people usually throw those away. And then I have the spot where the radio would be. Now, there is no current radio there, but that's where it would be. Moving on to the center console, I have a little ashtray. Then I get the shifter itself. This is one of the few modifications this car does have. It has a different shift knob and shift boot, so this is not what it looks like from the factory. However, I like it. I like the little ball shifter. And I do get a shift pattern down at the bottom in case you forgot where your gears are. Now, of course, the 1985 Toyota MR-2 fails the big friggin' bottle test on the basis that it doesn't have any cup holders. Very stereotypical of 80s cars, but alas, no cup holders. So, a couple of thank yous to the people who made this video possible. First of all, we have Cash for Cars. Cash for Cars wants to buy your car. Whether it's running, non-running, has a good title, salvage title, whatever it is, you can get a free quote from Cash for Cars and they will pick up your vehicle in less than 24 hours. Our next sponsor is Fixed. Fixed is a Bluetooth OBD2 sensor that plugs directly into your car and pairs to your smartphone. The app allows you to monitor your vehicle's health. It gives you a forecast of issues that might come up and helps you schedule maintenance and find new parts. Our final sponsor is Conplates. Conplates is a suction cup license plate mount for the front of your vehicle if you don't want to drill one into your bumper. All three of our fantastic sponsors can be found in the description below, as well as videos explaining them further if you'd like more information, but let's get on with the review. Up behind me, I do have a little storage container up by my right shoulder. It's not going to store a whole lot, but at least you get something here in the MR-2 in terms of a center console. And then we got to get onto the seats. The seats are factory and they have lumbar support. They have adjusting bolsters, all from the factory in a base model MR-2. This is really, really nice. I love the look of them. Very, very sporty, but very, very 80s. I mean, you can't deny how 80s these seats look. And thank God we don't have any back seats. I can't imagine trying to cram in the back seat of an MR-2, but we do have two different trunks. So let's go take a look at our storage options. All right, so the fun thing about the MR-2 is because the engine is right here, this is where the engine compartment is, you still get a regular trunk and you get a front trunk. So we'll go up front second, and I already popped the levers from inside, so I don't have to do it one-handed. But here's the actual trunk, which is actually decently sizable. I'm not too mad about it, given the fact that there's a whole engine in between you and your trunk. This is still pretty sizable, which is really nice. And I'd say, honestly, less than a NA Miata, but not by that much. Not by as much as you would think. So we'll pop this closed, and then we'll come around the front here. And because there is no engine up here, hood release like a regular hood, hold on. And there you go, you get a front trunk as well, this is where your spare tire is. David has a jack at the ready, full-size jack in case that ever has to be used, but you get a decent amount up here. I would not put anything fragile up here. You know, there's a lot of exposed metal and not many soft surfaces. Besides this is a little bit soft, but other than that, I wouldn't put your eggs up here or anything like that, but you at least get some storage up in the front. Of course, you get your washer and wiper motor and fuse box and master cylinder and things like that up here as well. But you do get some storage up here, which is fantastic. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and this car is so unmistakably 80s. I absolutely love it. It reminds me, of course, of my 85 RX-7 I used to have, because that was in red, and it is tiny. This is a very small car. It's smaller than what I thought. I would have thought that it was on the same level as the RX-7, but it's actually somewhat smaller. I love the vent on the side for the air intake. I just think overall this is such an interesting little car. And so let's get to my final thoughts on the MR-2. What do I think? Now, having finally driven not only all 3 generations of the MR-2, but specifically this here AW11. Well, I really genuinely love this car. I really, really do. And I love it for a couple of reasons. First of all, MR-2 stands for midship, so mid-engined, runabout, going around town, 2-seater, has 2 seats. And I don't think that there's a phrase or sentence that encompasses this car better than that. A midship runabout 2-seater. Mostly the runabout, which people don't really talk about. They always talk about how it's mid-engined, and that's cool, and it's only a 2-seater, that's cool. But the runabout part, this car is so easy to drive, easy to get in and out of gear. I'm not laboring over the mechanics of it at all. This is one of the most daily drivable 80s sports cars there is. More so than the RX-7. The RX-7, it's a rotary. You have to treat it differently. You gotta let it fully warm up. You gotta let it fully cool down. This, that, and the other. You're cruising in an RX-7 at about 4,000 RPM if you're treating the motor right. This, I'm at 2,300 RPM. I'm on a beautiful back road. The car's not loud. It's not noisy. It handles super well. And I'm comfortable. The space in here is pretty comfortable. My right leg could use a little bit more room, but it's a sports car, you know? So I really think Toyota nailed it with the runabout portion of this car. This is a little runabout town car, and I love that about it. My second final thought is that my uncle, shout out to my Uncle George, owned one of these, and he owned something really special. Now I understand why when we get together at a restaurant or at my house or whatever it is, and he sits and talks about the MR-2, I understand why there's a twinkle in his eye. I understand why he lusts for the time that he owned one. He always tells me the story of when he saw it on the showroom floor. He knew. He knew. And now, 36 years later, getting behind the wheel of one, I know. Now I know. I understand MR-2s better, and I think I understand my uncle a little bit better. But my last final talking point about this car is the fact that David recently rebuilt the head of this car. This car was off the road for years and years and years, and now finally back on the road. And I envy David. I envy him because I know what it's like to get a car back on the road after years of sitting. He recently took this car to an autocross event and he had a blast. He's been driving it around. He's been nearly dailying it. It's been amazing. That joy that you feel when you get a car back on the road is unlike anything else. Unless you've done it, you won't really understand it. And I don't want to sound like one of those guys like, you don't get it, but it's really a surreal, unique experience. And I envy David because he gets to experience that feeling in this. He gets to take this out to ice cream late at night for the first time. He gets to see it under the stars. He gets to daily drive it to the store, and you walk out with your shopping bags, and you just get this dumb smile on your face because you know that you're getting into a fun car, and it's unlike anything else in the Jewel parking lot. My life is seriously marked and chaptered in my head of if I drove my RX-7 to that location. There was a Christmas party years ago, and I only remember the fact that I took my RX-7 there, and I showed it off to my friends. I think I just put new wheels on it too. I was very hyped, and so I'm jealous. I'm jealous that David gets to drive this whenever he wants. I had to schedule a time, and a brief time at that. But coming out to this in the morning, doesn't get much better. Not get much better. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to David for letting me take out his AW11 MR-2. And actually, it might be cursed, David, because I might make a very stupid purchase coming up. After driving this, I don't know how I won't. But huge thank you to David nevertheless. He's been absolutely awesome. He got this car back on the road. There is one more AW11 MR-2 running around the streets of the US because of David, and that's absolutely awesome. So huge thank you to him. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.